Welcome to the Data Vault Friday. My name is Michael Schimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We have the session here every Friday to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about Data Vault, data-driven applications, data mining, cloud computing, MP stuff here, and so on. Everything data-driven is okay. You can use a chat here in the client if you want to raise a live question. You can also use the Q&A function here in the client. You can also just raise your hand. I give you a voice. And you can also use a form where I show you the link to the form after today's session, essentially. And if you receive multiple questions, I will be cherry picking. Good question is where I can answer it in a time box format, like 10 minutes roughly, right? Should be a good video for YouTube platforms or anything else, or video platforms. And if there will be no question at all, I will talk about the cluster. I can rely on you these days, so I get more questions than we can answer at the moment, which is cool. But keep shooting them, right? So always running short in 2 weeks from now. That's what it is. Yeah, let me show you the question we received here. So this is about modeling Salesforce data, history tables essentially. And so we use Salesforce as well. And in Salesforce, you have on your, let's say, contact data, this data is about contact. On your contact record, you have attributes, right? And you can activate version tracking on a few of those attributes. There's a limit on how many attributes you can track. But what happens is there's a history table, I believe it's called, contact history or something. And in contact history, Salesforce would then keep track of the changes to your attributes. So here we see that there were a few changes on, well, different contacts. Different contacts. And number of fields have been modified. You get the data type for the field, and then you get the old value, the new value, essentially, some key value store, essentially. So the question is how to model this. And the first thing that comes to the mind of this person here who asked the question is to model this as multi-text data attached to a contact hub. And when I prepared the slide, I was agreeing to that. Because let me go through some options here, right? What we could do here. So we could have a multi-text satellite. The only thing is I would not create the field name. This one here, it's a bit hard to read, sorry for that. The field name would be the dependent key, or what I like to call it, a multi-active attribute. That's the attribute that we use to extend the primary key with. Now, I don't trust a source system, and not even Salesforce. And the problem is, what if you get 2 rows for the same contact in the same, even with the same, in the same batch actually, so load date wise, with the same field name. 2 changes for whatever reason. Maybe it's okay, it's allowed by the source system, or maybe it's just dirty data, some glitch or whatever, right? I want to be able to capture all the data at all times. And that would break your primary key in a multi-text satellite. So what I do is always, in the raw data vault especially, I rely not on a source attribute to define anything in a primary key in the satellite. Not a timestamp. You could get the idea of using the create date as a timestamp somehow in the primary key of the satellite. Not a good idea. What if you get duplicates again, right? 2 rows with the same created date. I don't know. And not on a field name like this. So what I do is we typically add, and we always add actually, in the staging area or in a data lake, we add a subsequence to the incoming data. So in your Parquet files or in your relation staging area, we add a subsequence, and the subsequence is unique per row in the same batch of the same file, for example, or data feed. And this sequence, I'm just querying from the data lake into my multi-text satellite as a multi-text attribute. That's how I extend the primary key, because that sequence is under my control and it's unique per row in the same batch. And then I can have duplicates, 2 rows in the multi-text satellite with the field name owner. Who cares? It's just 2 rows. And with business logic downstream in the business vault, I'll deal with that. What does it mean? How do I fix this issue? And so on, right? That's all business logic. I want to avoid using that before the raw data vault. So that's number one. So I would always use a sequence number from the staging area to extend the primary key of the multi-text satellite in the raw data vault. Different story in the business vault. I'm going the lazy way. Here as well, because that's the most easy option. I don't need to find any metadata, right? It's always a subsequence. Here, if you want to use the field name, you have to define the field name as metadata to be used for this particular satellite as the multi-text attribute, essentially, right? So that's what I want to avoid. So that's just my first thought. And then when I was getting ready for this session here, I was thinking about this and I'm looking at this data and said, no, it doesn't work. Because what we have here is actually two references mostly. There's the contact ID. Those are the technical IDs inside Salesforce. That's like a technical number essentially. But you also have the created by user ID. The created by ID, that's the user ID essentially of the user who created the record. So you're looking at a relationship, at least assuming that the user is also a hub. So when you have two hubs here, that's a relationship. Now you could have a link between those two hubs that you already have most probably for contact and user, and then have a multi-actor satellite attached to that where you capture this data. But then you also said, that's the next part here now. Next question is, let's think about the next question first. Next question is about the preferred method for retrieving the data. So you want to consume it apparently. I would need to convert the columnar format into a row format. So you want to essentially, how's it called? Pivotize the data essentially. So with that in mind, now we're looking at a link to hubs, the multi-satellite, you have to join all that together and then pivotize it. And that's a bummer, in my opinion. Especially because if you know Salesforce, these data sets are large because you have all these changes over a day on the contacts and you update multiple columns and they're all being tracked. This becomes a large table, right? Even in our case, internally, that's one of the larger tables here. So, or those history tables are typically a bit larger. And now you have to join all that, which is a bummer. Yeah, I would have tried to avoid that. What about this? So yeah, you could have a link between those two hubs, user and contact and the multi-actor satellite maybe. But what about, some people know me from projects and I'm a pragmatic modeler, right? So with the information retrieval in mind, what about looking at this data here more like events? Because it's a log file. It logs the changes to your contact data, right? If this is a log file, what about a non-historized link? Because the non-historized link could easily refer to the two hubs here, right? And then let me just double check. There's no transaction ID in that, but I don't need that actually. I could add the created date as a timeline to the non-historized link, just like in the book when we add the flight date to the flight information or flight data. We could do the same here with created date. That's the event time essentially, just adding that to the non-historized link. I could add the field, the data types, all these attributes here into the link structure directly, having no satellite attached to it, no non-historized satellite or something, just add these attributes to the link table. So the non-historized link would more or less look like this, this table here. The only difference is you would replace those technical IDs by the business keys and hash them, right? So you would refer to the business key of the contact and to the business key of the user, hash them, and that's what you attach to the non-historized link. And the other payload like load date, there's a record source and so on, fine. Yeah, and then you're done. That's it. Just attach this data as a non-historized link. And when you want to retrieve it, you could just pivotize the data and you're done. You select the fields that you want to report on, because most probably you can't report on all of these fields because then the pivotized data becomes too wide, right? But yeah, just select those fields that you want with the where condition and pivotize the data. And then you're done. No joins, no nothing. It's all done essentially. The only thing you might have to join is the business key for the contact, for example, from the hub. So one inner join to the hub and you're done. And that you do later. So in the fact view, you just do the pivotizing. And then you keep the hash key for the contact and maybe for the user, and those become your dimension references anyway, right? So we don't have to join the hub before the pivotizing operation. That's what I want to avoid essentially. To some extent, well, wouldn't be too bad. So, but yeah, that would be my design, to be honest. Yeah, I'm a programming modeler, and it's events describing your contacts. You could go both ways, but I believe if you want to really push the data downstream, large volumes of data could be the better option essentially. And that's, I was wondering, to be honest, because in Flow BI, this my little side project here, this type of data is modeled as non-historized links as well. And I was thinking of why do we do this again? But yeah, we do it because there's a relationship here. That's why. All right. One or two more comments. What we could do in addition. If you stick to the multi-active data, or even the non-historized link, you could combine some records. What if you would model the key value store what you have here? Well, it's a multiple key, right? You have you have those keys here, and you have this is part of your key, and there's multiple values here. the data type and the old value, new value, those are value attributes in your key value scenario. But you could model this as a JSON string as well. And then instead of using a multi-axis satellite, you use a standard satellite and attach the JSON in there. That could be also interesting because, especially because you have a varying keys here, right? Just saying, could be interesting. I wouldn't do it though. I would stick to the non-historized link in all honesty. I would just model this as a non-historized link and I'm done. And just keep the granularity as it is, not reducing the grain somehow to a JSON string, right? But just bringing it up for some people who like this idea but look at slightly different data, JSON might also be an option to model this key value data here, essentially. And then again comes a question, how do you combine those JSON records into your pivotized data, right? That's the other question. So if I would use JSON, I'm not sure. Here in this scenario, I would use the non-historized link because I can quickly derive the pivotized data essentially afterwards. That's the idea. All right. And then for pivotizing, you have the standard functionalities in your database. That's what I would use. Take a look at that. Okay. If you have a question like this, as I promised, there's a link, sfr.ee/dbfriday. That's where this person here, the person who asked the question here, essentially submitted a question. Thanks for the image. Was a bit refreshing here to have from one image. Yeah, use the form here, sfr.ee/dbfriday. That's where you can submit your questions. And also check out our other webinars on Warescape and DBT at scalefree.to/webinars. And if you can't wait until Friday, oops, sorry. There you go. Then check out our the Data Innovators Exchange, which is a forum-style community that we set up with Ignition Data together. Ignition Data is in Australia. Where you can essentially ask questions and they get answered as quick as possible because there's a little competition going on between the Ignition Data guys and the Scalefree guys. So you don't have to wait until next Friday to get an answer here, qualified answer. Cool. Other than that, I hope to see you next Friday and enjoy your weekend, guys. Thank you.